How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another Scales and Tails YouTube video. This week we're going to talk about how in bass fishing, one bite and one giant fish can change an angler's life forever. It can put an angler in the record books, create a career, and even change the way we all fish forever. But what happens after that fish is caught? Today, we're looking at the anglers whose lives were changed forever by one massive bass, through money, fame, sponsorships, and even sometimes controversy. Chapter 1. George Perry, 1932, the birth of big bass fame. In 1932, George Perry caught a 22-pound, 4-ounce largemouth bass out of Montgomery Lake, Georgia. At the time, there was no social media, no YouTube, and no sponsorship deals. But even back then, a giant bass could change everything for one man. He submitted his fish to the 1932 Field and Stream Fishing Contest and won a brand new rod, reel, and $75. $75 doesn't sound a lot to you and I, but during the Great Depression, that could have been a whole month's worth of wages. Adjusting for inflation in 2025, that $75 is almost worth $1,600 in today's money. His catch became the benchmark for all bass fishermen, a record that stood nearly alone for 80 years. And even today, people are still chasing George Perry's world record bass. Chapter 2, Bill Murphy, the Deepwater Pioneer. Bill Murphy had never held the world record, but he changed bass fishing forever. His book, In Pursuit of Giant Bass, became the blueprint for targeting truly giant bass in your waters. His monotonous study of how big bass related to offshore structure influenced an entire generation of people fishing for truly giant bass. While others were fishing the bank, Murphy was mapping the depths. His legacy wasn't just a single fish, it was a new way we could learn how to catch truly big fish. Murphy's influence didn't come from catching one giant bass, it came from teaching others how to catch a dozen of them. Fast forwarding a little bit to Chapter 3, Mike Long, From Legend to Infamy. The story of Mike Long is pretty well known, but we're going to go in depth to it a little bit. For years, Mike Long was the king of swimbait fishing. He wasn't just catching giants, he was building a personal brand with them, influencing lure companies and securing sponsorships along the way. Big bass made Mike Long a household name in the trophy bass world. He became the face for multiple lure companies, had articles written about him, and helped sell thousands of dollars worth of gear and swim baits to help people truly believe that they could go out and catch that one fish they were after. Then, in 2019, the truth came out. Accusations of staged photos, foul play, and even video evidence of snagging fish destroyed his reputation overnight. His sponsors dropped him, and he dropped his career overnight. And just like that, the man's name, who was once synonymous with trophy bass, became one of the biggest scandals in fishing history. If you guys aren't familiar, there is a YouTube out there. Just look up Mike Long, and it'll be one of the first ones that pop up. I truly encourage you guys to go watch it. It shows how greed and the sense of needing to be relevant has really destroyed his career, as well as multiple other people that I'm sure are doing the same thing, but have yet to be caught. Jumping back a little bit to Chapter 4, Bob Crupi and the 20-Pound Club. Unlike Mike Long, Bob Crupi's place in big bass history is untouchable. In the late 80s and early 90s, Crupi caught multiple 20-pound fish out of Castaic Lake, including a 22-pounder that put him right behind George in the world record books. His giant bass earned him magazine covers, TV interviews, and big money sponsorships. At one point, it was estimated that Crupi's catches generated millions in tourism and tackle shop sales, as well as anglers coming all across the country to see where these giant bass are being caught out of in the lakes of California. All coming to have a hope at catching the truly next giant bass. His success helped fuel the giant bass chase, and after that, bass fishing was never really the same. Being the only man to catch multiple 20-pound class fish, Bob Crupi did it with floating crawdads on the bottom of the lake, a technique that Bill Murphy talks about in his book. Sitting out on the lake, double anchored down for hours at a time, letting crawfish soak while he sat up in his boat drinking Pepsi. It was a crazy thing. They talk about it in Sow Belly, the book written by Monty Burke. I would highly encourage you guys to go read that book. It's a super good book. You can learn a little bit more about all these guys that I've talked about so far. Manabu Kurita, the man who tied the world record. For nearly 80 years, George Perry's 22-pound, 4-ounce largemouth was untouchable. Then, in 2009, Manabu changed history when he caught a 22-pound, 5-ounce fish out of Japan Lake's Biwa. Since IGFA rules state that the record must be beaten by at least 2 ounces, Manabu's bass officially tied Perry's world record fish. But the impact was undeniable. Japan was officially on the world stage as one of the greatest trophy bass fisheries on the planet. Manabu's catch did not just rewrite the history books, it provided the next world record might not even be in the US. His fame exploded and he became a national celebrity in Japan, securing sponsorships and international recognition as one of the greatest big bass anglers of all time. Chapter 6. Dottie, the Ghost of Dixon Lake. Some legends aren't just about the anglers who catch the truly giant bass, but sometimes it's the bass themselves. And no fish has captivated the trophy bass world as much as Dottie. In the early 2000s, 3 anglers, Mac Weekly, Mike Flynn, and Jed Dixon, became obsessed with one bass. She was like any other, an absolute monster of a fish, easily over 20 pounds with a black birthmark under her gill plate that they later named Dottie. Dottie wasn't just another giant bass, she was the world record contender. Over the years, the trio hooked her multiple times, each encounter pushing the boundaries of what they thought they were going to be able to do to hook her. Then, March 20th, 2006, the unthinkable happened. Mac Weekly landed Dottie at 25 pounds, 1 ounce. Big enough to break the world record by nearly 3 pounds, but there was one problem: she was foul hooked. Because she was accidentally caught outside the mouth, the fish was ineligible to be considered the world record. The world record remained untouched, and just like that, the greatest bass ever caught became to be the what if of the fishing industry. Even though her record never stood, Dottie changed the game forever. She fueled the modern obsession with giant bass and proving that 25-pound fish do exist. Swimbait culture exploded. Anglers from all around the world flocked to Lake Dixon to see what the magic was all about. In 2008, Dottie's journey came to an end, and she was found floating and weighing in at 19 pounds. Some say she could have hit that 30-pound mark at her peak, but one thing is for certain: no single bass has ever changed trophy bass fishing more than Dottie. Chapter 7. Mike Gilbert, the swimbait visionary. Mike Gilbert didn't just catch big bass, he turned it into an art form. When he landed his 17-pound giant and released it in his Working Class Zero video, it wasn't just another big fish story, it was a movement. Gilbert's philosophy on trophy bass fishing turned into a lifestyle brand, Working Class Zero, which has grown into one of the most respectable names in the swimbait industry. His approach made swimbait culture mainstream and helped shift the focus from tournament wins to trophy bass fishing. Working Class Zero is truly a pillar in the swimbait world and swimbait community. His grunge skate style brought into the swimbait world has changed everything as we know it, often pushing the limits for bait building as well as modification in fish behavior thoughts. Mike has done so much for the swimbait community, it's kind of crazy to stand back and look at how much he's changed everything from when it all started. He's truly made the culture something unique with a cross blend of the fishing scene as well as the skate scene from where he came from. Without Mike, I don't know where the swimbait world would be, but I think it's a lot better with the help of Mike. One giant bass didn't just change his life, it helped create an entire underground movement in the swimbait world. Sorry guys, my light died. But Chapter 8, Josh Jones, the LiveScope King. Josh Jones was just another angler until forward-facing sonar came to be. Learning with LiveScope, he cracked the code to consistently catch truly giant fish and double-digit bass. Now he's guiding, competing, and proving that big bass fishing is evolving faster than anyone could imagine. His catches land him sponsorships with major brands, and now he's one of the most sought-after guides in Texas. But his success also sparked controversy. Some say technology is making trophy bass fishing too easy. Whether you love it or hate it, there's no denying that LiveScope and the anglers who master it are rewriting the history books. Chapter 8. How one bass can change your life. Every angler has that fish, the one that makes you believe and the one that keeps you up. Whether it's one you've already hooked or you haven't stumbled across yet, maybe it's a new personal best, or maybe it's a world record, or maybe it's the one that got away. No matter where you are on your fishing journey, remember this: one fish can change everything. It can make you a legend, it can start a new fishing trend, or it could redefine your purpose in the fishing world. So now we ask you, what's the one fish that changed your life? Drop a comment below and tell us about your true giant bass story. And if you're still chasing it, just know that it could be your next cast on your next trip.